And now to Syria and the increasing likelihood of new American strikes against the regime of Bashar al-Assad. As we reported earlier, the president telegraphed his intention today to strike Syria again. William Brangham charts the potentially dangerous road ahead.
So what options are available to the United States and its allies if there is a military response to last weekend's chemical attack? To walk us through the complex battlefield, I'm joined by Ambassador Douglas Lute. He was U.S. Ambassador to NATO from 2013 to 2017, served on the national security staffs of Presidents Bush and Obama, and is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General. He's now at Harvard's Kennedy School. Welcome back to the NewsHour.
It's good to be back.
First off, let's just address this issue of, can you confidently say that this chemical attack that happened last weekend was carried out by Assad?
Well, I think we can have some degree of confidence, largely because of the scale of the attack. This was not an assassination attempt of one or two people, but rather dozens of people were involved here. And that suggests a military attack. And of course, it's the Assad military, the Syrian military, that has this capability. So at least circumstantially, all fingers point towards the Syrian military.
Okay. President Trump tweeted this morning, the missiles are coming. Let's say we do go forward. What are the options for the U.S.?
Well, I think the first thing to consider here is that the options will flow from the purpose of the attack.
Meaning what we want to get out of it.
The objectives, right? And these have to come from a very deliberate process inside the Situation Room, led by National Security Advisor Bolton, and ultimately approved by the president. So once the objectives are set, and here I imagine the objectives are reasonably simple, and that is to punish those responsible for this particular attack, to impose costs, and by way of those costs, attempt to deter future attacks. And if that's the objective, from that flows tasks to the intelligence community, tasks to the diplomatic community, and tasks to the military.
Now, we've heard that the Russians have said, if the U.S. strikes, they might strike back. Not only will they try to knock our missiles down, but they might even target the platforms from which we launch those attacks. Is this just Russian saber rattling? How do you seriously do you take this?
Well, the thing that concerns me about this sort of exchange of rhetoric on our side, but then the response on the Russian side, is that you can already see a pattern of escalation, even in the rhetoric. And the challenge here is that such escalatory steps can be imagined to be controllable. From inside the Situation Room, we might imagine that these are discrete, controllable steps. But in practice, they are often out of control, and we can lose control, and they can spiral in an escalatory manner because of miscalculation and misperceptions. So the danger here, I think, is that we launch into something that becomes escalatory.
And obviously, we've got so many different actors at play in Syria. I mean, you've got the Turks, you've got the Russians, you've got the Americans, you've got ISIS, the Iranians. Do you worry that those people might also be drawn into this?
Well, I think inevitably there's that risk. We know that Russian forces and Iranian forces are intermingled with Syrian forces, advising them and assisting them. So a U.S. strike, which is intended to precisely strike Syrian forces responsible for this attack, could inadvertently strike Russian and Iranian forces as well.
What do you think about the option of not responding? Is that a viable option?
Well, that's always an option as well. The challenge here is that the rhetoric has already put us on the path towards and setting expectations towards a response. So there's a certain cost by now, if now we were not to do anything.
Do you think that these attacks, however we do it, we saw that the president launched 59 Tomahawk missiles a year ago to try to curtail this kind of behavior. Is your sense that we can stop Assad from using chemical weapons? I mean, he has done this dozens of times in Syria.
I'd be very careful in suggesting that we are in the driver's seat here and that we can actually effectively deter Assad. Why is that? Deterrence rests on the notion that we can impose costs sufficient on Assad to change his calculus, to change his behavior. The challenge here is that for Assad, this is existential. This is survival. So how do you raise the costs above survival? And because of this disparity in interests, he's all in and we have only limited interests. It's very difficult to deter him. And I think that's why we've seen over the last year plus that these sorts of attacks continue.
Ambassador Douglas Lute, thank you as always.
Good to be with you.